Good morning, afternoon, evening, ladies and gentlemen. We would like to welcome all of you to the closing plenary of the 19th International Anti-Corruption Conference. My name is Kim Yeonjin, your MC for this session. Actually, today is the last day for me, so I'd like to say it is my great honor to participate in this meaningful conference. Housekeeping information first. IACC 2020 is now being live streamed for global attendees and simultaneously interpreted in 6 UN official languages and Korean. So for the speakers on Zoom, if you need translation, please select the language by clicking the global icon on the bottom of the Zoom screen. And the studio in Korea has been complying with all the requested COVID-19 quarantine measures required by the government. Now, this is the final plenary session for the 19th IACC with a farewell ceremony. We have 4 speakers to deliver the message for shaping the 2030 agenda for truth, trust, and transparency, the theme of the final plenary session. So after their speeches, we will hear reading of Seoul Declaration and short farewell ceremony. So please stay with us until the end. So without further ado, let us begin. First of all, we would like to introduce Mr. An Sung-ho, President of Korea Institute of Public Administration. He will deliver his presentation first. So Mr. An Sung-ho, would you please start?
Okay, thank you for your introduction. Hello, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen. Greetings to you from Seoul, Korea. Thank you for your participation in this closing session. I am very glad to meet you across the world via video conferencing, although we couldn't get together face to face. Today, I'm going to talk about the lesson from Korea's pandemic response. From now on, let me deliver my message in Korean. 오늘 세계적으로 코로나 바이러스 확진자는 6,500만 명을 넘었습니다. 사망자는 150만 명이 넘었습니다. 코로나 바이러스는 모든 나라를 공략했지만 그 영향은 나라마다 다릅니다. 확진자 대비 사망자의 비율을 나타내는 치명률의 세계 평균은 2.4%입니다.
As of today, the number of confirmed cases of coronavirus exceeds 65 million people, while the death toll reaches 1.5 million around the world. The coronavirus attacked every country, but the impact varies by the nation. The world average of fatality rates, a ratio of the number of the dead to those who were infected with the virus, is 2.4%.
미국을 비롯한 많은 나라들이 2~3%대에 있지만 한국은 1.5%로 가장 낮습니다. 인구 10만 명당 사망자 수의 세계 평균은 19명입니다. 미국, 영국, 이탈리아 등은 80~90명에 달하고 있습니다. 한국은 단 1명에 불과합니다. 팬데믹의 경제적 효과도 한국은 OECD 국가 중에서 가장 적게 받았습니다.
The rate of many countries, including the US, hovers around 2 to 3%, and that of Korea is 1.5, the lowest. And death toll per every 100,000 population is 19, but it goes to over 80 to 90 in the US, UK, and Italy, and Korea is just 1. And the economic impact of pandemic on Korea is negative 1.0, the lowest among the OECD countries.
그동안 K-방역은 민주적 모델로서 국제적인 주목을 받아왔습니다.
So far, K-quarantine has received many attentions from the globe as a democratic model.
코로나 바이러스는 공중보건과 경제뿐만 아니라 민주주의도 공격했습니다. 팬데믹 이후 80개국 이상에서 민주주의의 퇴보가 있었습니다.
This coronavirus attacks not just public health, but also economy. And also, democracy was undermined in more than 80 countries.
반면 한국을 포함한 일부 국가는 팬데믹 위기를 오히려 민주주의 혁신의 기회로 삼았습니다.
But some countries, including Korea, were able to take this crisis of pandemic as an opportunity to innovate democracy.
K-방역은 무엇보다도 위기 학습의 산물입니다. 다시 말해 K-방역은 팬데믹 위기를 학습의 기회로 삼아서 이룩한 성과입니다. 304명의 생명을 앗아가 대통령까지 탄핵시킨 2014년 세월호 참사로부터 정부는 소중한 교훈을 얻었습니다. 그 교훈은 위험에 처한 국민을 구하는 일이 정부의 최우선 책무라는 것입니다.
The big characteristics of K-quarantine is the product of a crisis learning, and it is about taking crisis and an opportunity. We've learned a valuable lesson from Seoul ferry disaster, which took 304 lives and that led to the impeachment of the former president. The lesson we've learned is that we need to put saving lives of people at risk as a top priority.
정부는 2015년 메르스 방역의 실패로부터 교훈을 얻고 향후 감염병 확산에 대비한 방역 체계를 정비했습니다. 새로운 방역 체계는 이번에 코비드19의 방역에 큰 도움을 주었습니다. 아울러 정부는 현재 진행 중인 팬데믹 방역을 학습 과정으로 삼고 방역 역량을 축적해 왔습니다.
By learning from the previous experience where the government failed to properly respond to MERS outbreak in 2015, it established preventive measures for potential outbreak of the virus, and it also helped implement COVID-19 quarantine measures in an effective manner. In addition, the government is constantly learning from the ongoing quarantine management practices.
K-방역을 이끈 최고의 핵심 가치는 생명 먼저 정책 기조라고 하겠습니다. 문재인 대통령은 이 정책 기조가 세월호 참사로 희생된 젊은이들이 우리에게 남겨준, 일깨워준 공감의 교훈에서 비롯된 것이라고 지적했습니다. 정부는 모든 한국인과 외국인 거주자에게 무료 검진과 치료 서비스를 제공했습니다.
The core value of K-quarantine is putting life first policy. President Moon Jae-in stressed that this policy principle comes from the lesson of sympathy that was enlightened by the victims of the Seoul ferry event. The government has offered free testing and treatment services to all Koreans and even foreign residents.
그리고 외국인 거주자에게도 재난 구호 지원금을 주었습니다. 위험에 처한 해외 교민을 전세기와 군용기를 보내 귀국시켜서 보호했습니다. 이 생명 먼저 정책 기조에 기초한 K-방역은 돈에 집착해 한 다른 나라의 방역과 전혀 다른 결과를 가져왔습니다. K-방역은 생명의 희생을 최소화하면서 경제적 타격도 줄일 수 있었습니다.
Disaster relief fund was also provided to foreigners living in Korea, and the chartered planes and military planes were sent to Korean people living in foreign countries to protect them from the virus. K-quarantine, based on this putting lives first policy, brought about different results comparing with other countries. And we're able to minimize the sacrifice of the lives while reducing the economic impact.
정부는 약자 보호를 투자로 인식하고 포용적 방역을 담대하게 추진했습니다. 보편적 국민건강보험 제도는 포용적 방역에 크게 기여했습니다. 코비드19 진료비와 치료비의 80%를 국민건강보험이 부담했습니다.
Recognizing the protecting the vulnerabilities is an investment. Quarantine measures were taken boldly. Universal national health insurance systems contributed a lot in this process. The national health insurance bore 80% of the costs for testing and treatment in this COVID-19 pandemic. And then
그리고 엊그제 국회는 제3차 긴급 구호 지원금을 지급하기로 결정했습니다. 그동안 K-방역은 팬데믹 위기에서 약자 보호 조치가 비용이 아니라 전염병 확산을 막고 건강한 민주자본주의를 지키는 투자라는 사실을 분명히 확인시켜 주었습니다.
The day before yesterday, the National Assembly approved the third emergency relief fund and the K-quarantine reform that in the crisis of pandemic, the protecting the vulnerabilities and the vulnerables is an investment to prevent the further spread of the infectious diseases and to safeguard healthy democratic capitalism.
정부는 투명성을 개방성과 민주주의와 함께 K-방역의 3대 원리 중 하나로 천명했습니다. 한 외국 언론은 K-방역의 투명성을 단호한 투명성이라고 명명했습니다. 정부의 방역 책임자는 1일 보고회를 열어서 국민에게 방역 정보를 낱낱이 보고했습니다.
The government reiterated that the transparency is one of the three principles of K-quarantine along with openness and democracy. And one foreign press called the transparency of K-quarantine as unwavering transparency. The government senior officials responsible for the quarantine reported every single detailed information about quarantine and sent out a real-time quarantine status via text messaging.
방역 당국과 기초지방정부는 주민에게 하루에도 몇 차례씩 필요한 방역 정보를 문자 메시지로 보냈습니다. 정부는 확진자 동선의 공개 등으로 발생할 프라이버시 침해가 생기지 않도록 노력했습니다. 그러나 향후 공중 보건을 위해 개인정보를 부득이 공개하는 경우에 발생할 수 있는 문제에 대해서는 좀 더 세심한 대책이 필요하다고 생각합니다.
Along with sending quarantine-related information through messaging on a daily basis, the government also put an effort not to infringe on the privacy of the general public coming from the tracing of the route by the infected person. However, in case when a personal information has to be opened for the sake of public health, more careful attention and measures may need for potential risks.
디지털 기술의 활용은 또 하나의 K-방역 성공의 요인입니다. 정부는 잘 발달된 디지털 인프라를 적극 활용해서 방역 활동을 펼치고 팬데믹 환경에 적응하는 서비스의 제공을 지원했습니다.
Digital technology is another success factor of K-quarantine. The government has played out its quarantine activities by making the most out of well-established digital infrastructure.
확진자의 동선과 감염 경로 파악, 진단과 역학조사 및 환자 관리, 재택근무, 원격 교육, 화상회의를 통한 사회적 거리두기, 마스크 공급, 그리고 국민과의 소통을 위한 실시간 방역 문자 제공 등의 정보통신 기술이 광범위하게 활용되었습니다.
The tracing and possible infection source identification, diagnosis, epidemiological investigation, and patient management, social distancing through remote working, remote education, and video conferencing, supply of masks, and real-time quarantine message for the public were all possible with the help of ICT.
방역에는 5단계 사회적 거리두기 지침에 따라서 최소한의 시한부 규제가 시행되었습니다. 그러나 정부는 그동안 해외 출입국을 막지 않았고 전면적인 재봉쇄 조치도 취하지 않았으며 이동의 자유도 제한하지 않았습니다.
To be in compliance with the guidelines of the 5 priority social distancing, the minimum regulations were enforced for a certain period of time, and the government has carried out preventive measures without closing its borders, lockdown or limiting the freedom of mobility.
다만 5단계 사회적 거리두기의 격상으로 부득이 일시적으로 대규모 집회를 금지하거나 집회 인원수를 제한했습니다. 이에 대해 약간의 논란과 갈등이 있었지만 다른 나라들에서 야기된 심각한 저항과 충돌은 없었습니다.
However, with the heightened level in the 5 grade social distancing measures, large gatherings were subject to prohibition or limits in the number of participants. It actually caused some controversy and conflicts, but it pales in comparison to other countries' cases.
정부의 적극 행정 촉진 정책은 공공부문과 민간 부문의 혁신을 유도했습니다. 질병관리본부는 코비드19 확산의 조짐이 나타나자 올 1월 말 전문가들과 20여 개 제약회사 대표들을 초청해서 서울역 회의를 개최해서 진단 시약을 개발을 상의하고 신속한 승인을 약속했습니다. 한 제약회사가 처음으로 진단검사법을 개발해 당국의 승인을 받은 것은 이날 회의로부터 단 일주일 뒤였습니다. 정부의 전강석화와 같은 적극 행정 덕분에 조기에 진단키트의 개발과 승인이 이루어짐으로써 감염병 확산의 조기 차단이 가능했습니다.
The proactive public administration promotion policies encouraged the innovation in business, medical sectors, and the general public. With the looming signs for COVID-19 to spread, at the end of January this year, the experts and the head of 20 pharmaceutical companies had a meeting at Seoul Station and discussed about the development of test kits and preventive measures. Since then, it took just 1 week for the development of a test kit, and it was approved soon. So this proactive administration helped prevent early spread of infectious disease.
보건복지부는 그동안 수십 차례에 걸쳐 적극행정지원위원회를 열고 방역 이슈를 논의했습니다. 그리고 감사원의 사전 컨설팅 감사를 받은 후에 곧바로 적극행정을 단행했습니다.
The Ministry of Health and Welfare has the Council for Proactive Public Administration, and based on the consulting and auditing from the Board of Auditors and Inspection, the proactive administration has been initiated.
정부의 이 같은 적극행정 촉진 정책에 힘입어서 워크스루 진단, 드라이브스루 진단, 생활치료센터, 착한 임대료운동, 코비드19 심리지원단, 해고 없는 도시운동 등 혁신적인 아이디어들이 분출했습니다.
Walk-through test and drive-through test and good landlord movement and community treatment center and many other innovative ideas from the private sector were adopted by the government.
중앙정부와 지방정부의 파트너십은 방역의 성공을 견인했습니다. 정부는 올 1월 24일부터 지금까지 단 하루도 거르지 않고 중앙재난안전대책본부 회의를 열어왔습니다. 국무총리가 주관하는 회의의 경우 18개 부처 장관과 17개 시도지사가 참석하는 화상회의가 진행되었습니다.
K-quarantine was the result of the partnership between the central government and local governments. Since January 24th to today, the government has not been missing any single meeting at the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures headquarters. And if the meeting is presided by the Prime Minister, 18 ministers and 17 heads of the major cities and provinces attend the meeting through video conference.
아울러 관련 정부기관의 공무원들과 226개 기초지방정부 수장들도 이 회의를 시청했습니다. 방역 현장에서 발로 뛰며 헌신한 지방정부 수장을 비롯한 지방 공무원들은 K-방역의 숨은 공로자들이었습니다.
This conference was also watched by the heads of relevant government organizations and 226 local governments. And the success of K-quarantine was possible thanks to the central government coordination roles and hidden heroes who dedicated to these preventive measures.
K 방역에 대한 국민의 신뢰는 정보 신뢰를 높였습니다. 한 조사에 의하면 10점 척도로 측정된 국민의 정보 신뢰도는 팬데믹 이후에 4.1점에서 6.1점으로 2점이 상승했습니다. 정보 신뢰 제고는 팬데믹 중에 치러진 4.15 총선에서 높은 투표율과 여당의 압승으로 이어졌습니다.
K-quarantine helped improve the public trust in government. According to one survey in 10-point scale, people's confidence in the government was raised by 2 points from 4.1 to 6.1. And it was reflected in the landslide victory of the ruling party in the last April 15th general election with the 66% unprecedented turnover rate.
66%의 전례 없이 높은 투표율을 기록한 가운데 여당의 국회의석이 300석 중 종래 128석에서 180석으로 뛰어올랐습니다.
And the ruling party sits in the National Assembly jumped to 180 from 128.
K-방역은 시민의식을 일깨웠습니다. 시민들이 자발적으로 마스크를 쓰고 사회적 거리를 준수했습니다. 착한 임대료 운동에도 동참했습니다. 의료 자원 봉사에 참여하거나 기부금을 내는 사람들도 생겼습니다. 지역 감정의 골이 깊은 영호남 지역 간에도 연대감이 형성되었습니다.
This K-quarantine awakened a citizenship. Citizens wore masks, exercising social distancing, and joined a good-hearted lease fee decrease movement. Some volunteered for medical assistance and donated funds. And there were even coordination between long livers of southeast and southwest side of Korea.
코로나 바이러스 확산으로 고통받던 대구 시민에게 광주 시민이 도움의 손길을 내밀었습니다. 이어 광주의 중증 환자용 병실이 부족하자 대구가 도움을 주었습니다. 어느 외국학자는 이런 현상이 유교적 권위주의의 유산이라고 폄하했습니다. 그러나 경험적 연구는 이 현상이 민주 시민의식의 발로임을 밝혀냈습니다.
For the Daegu citizens, people from Gwangju provided a helping hand. And afterwards, when Gwangju ran out of hospitals for severe patients, Daegu helped in return. One foreign scholar undermines this practice, saying that it is conforming to Confucian authoritarian, but empirical research identified that this is the manifestation of democratic citizenship.
국민은 정부와 함께 방역 서비스를 생산한 공동 생산자였습니다. 정부와 국민의 공동 생산이 없는 K-방역은 생각할 수 없습니다.
So K-quarantine was the result of co-production between the general public and government. And without the co-production, joining the general public, we cannot think of K-quarantine.
팬데믹 위기가 민주주의를 후퇴시키는 위협이 되느냐, 혹은 민주주의 혁신의 기회가 되느냐를 결정하는 것은 결국 정치적 의지에 달려 있음을 K-방역은 분명히 보여주었습니다.
Whether pandemic crisis is a threat to democracy or a chance to bring about the innovation in democracy is up to political will, and K-quarantine proved that.
팬데믹을 정치적 이해득실을 따져 정치화한 여느 나라의 정치 지도자들과 달리 한국 정부는 팬데믹 위기를 국민의 생명을 지키고 민주주의를 강화하는 학습 기회로 삼았습니다.
Unlike any other countries that politicized this cause, the Korean government made an effort to break through this crisis in a democratic way by putting life first.
K-방역은 민주주의가 최선의 사회적 백신임을 증명했습니다. 강한 민주주의의 저자 벤자민 바버는 우리는 우리 시대의 갖가지 위기에 직면해서 너무 많은 민주주의 때문이 아니라 너무 적은 민주주의 때문에 고통을 받고 있다고 지적했습니다.
K-quarantine proved that democracy is the best vaccine. Benjamin Barber, the author of Strong Democracy, said that when we are facing a variety of crises, we suffer not because of strong democracy, but because too little democracy.
K-방역은 우리가 위기 학습 역량을 발휘함으로써 강한 민주주의로 도약할 수 있는 가능성을 보여주었습니다.
K-quarantine showed a potential to make a strong democracy by taking the crisis into a learning opportunity.
로마 공화정의 부활을 염원한 피렌체의 애국자 니콜로 마키아벨리는 군주론에서 이렇게 당부했습니다. 좋은 위기가 제공하는 기회를 낭비하지 마시오.
Niccolo Machiavelli, Italian Renaissance diplomat who wrote The Prince, wishing for the restoration of the Roman Republic, urged, never waste the opportunity offered by a good crisis.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Anselmo, for your presentations. Here's something I'd like to tell you first. Due to the era of passable translation system, we couldn't proceed the first presentation on Zoom. So we asked for all speakers' understanding. And you know that we started this session behind the schedule, so we would like to ask the other speakers to deliver your presentations within 7 minutes. So yeah, we are so sorry for this inconvenience. So let's move on. The next speaker. The next speaker is Mr. Walva, Associate Administrator of Undp. So, Mr. When you are ready, you may start.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for inviting me today. I'm going to do my best to speak for under 7 minutes, so giving more time to the other speakers who I'm sure have far more interesting things to say than I do. But let me first express, on behalf of UNDP, really our gratitude to all our partners, to BMZ, to GIZ, to DANIDA, and to the US Department of State, and of course, to Transparency International and to our hosts, the Republic of Korea. So thank you very much. This has been an amazing conference. I'm joining on the last day, but I have to congratulate the organizers who've been sending me regular messages, updating me on the workshops, on the panels, and it's a splendid conference, so congratulations to all. The previous speaker referred to COVID and to the use of crisis as a learning opportunity. And I won't repeat his eloquent speech, but perhaps to note one sentence which I thought was very worthy of note, which is democracy is the best vaccine. Vaccines are also not bad, but democracy is the best vaccines, I believe. And in the context of COVID, I think we're faced, all of us, with certain policy choices. Leaving the situation as it is, and indeed leaving the economic crisis caused by COVID as it is without remedial action, we risk to see possibly by 2030 not the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, but about 1 billion people in extreme poverty on the globe. On the other hand, if we take the right mix of policies, and this is a study that's published yesterday by UNDP, with the right mix of policies, we may indeed be able to see a reduction of extreme poverty by 2030 by 146 million. So the future really is very much in our hands. But what else has COVID shown us? COVID has shown us the importance of oversight and accountability measures, with the impact of corruption being felt across healthcare services, policy making, procurement of medical supplies and equipment, including personal protective equipment and ventilators. There's also been some instances of mismanagement of funds that we can see. And there's an estimate that in the health sector alone, possibly around $500 billion are lost annually to corruption, more than the cost of universal health coverage would be for the whole world. So this is the sort of policy choice we're confronted with. The importance of transparency in managing COVID cases, also on the medical front, the very large amount of misinformation and disinformation that the United Nations has had to struggle with in the verified campaign are also instances where greater transparency, improved knowledge would help us not only overcome the COVID crisis, but really sort of use that crisis as an opportunity to reach development. The 19th IACC has demonstrated the priorities and commitment of the global anti-corruption community in our collective action. We have focused on the use of digital technology for anti-corruption efforts and know that technology has the incredible potential to improve the efficiency, effectiveness, and transparency in public finance management, procurement processes, and service delivery. UNDP's upcoming report on new technologies for sustainable development from the perspective of integrity, trust, and corruption, and anti-corruption, highlight the need for effective digital governance, regulatory mechanisms, and sustained investments. Distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished co-panelists, I apologize for taking too much time, but I do want to stress that now is the time to take collective action. We can do so on the basis of improved knowledge, on improved measurement of our initiatives and the impact we have on society, and indeed, and I would like to stress that point very strongly, on the collection of gender disaggregated data, which there is not enough of today as we seek to refine our public policy. With that, I hope that the Seoul Declaration will reflect the essence of IACC, and thank you very, very much for inviting me. I hope I haven't taken too much time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rod Walva, for your presentations. It was very informative. And let's turn to the next speaker, Mr. Peter Eigen, the founder of Transparency International. So, Mr. Peter Eigen, when you're ready, the floor is yours. Please proceed in 7 minutes. Sorry.
Thank you very much. For me, this is a great and exciting privilege to speak at this concluding conference. I'm trying to talk about the future, about shaping the 2030 agenda. But before I do that, let me dive very briefly back into the history. Exactly 25 years ago, when I visited the 11th International Anti-Corruption Conference in Beijing. And I was surprised at the time that at the end of the conference, I was asked whether Transparency International would be willing to take on the management of this series of fantastic conferences. We were very excited about it, and I must say, we never dreamed of the strength which this international anti-corruption conference has obtained over the time. But of course, this time is a very important time for such a strong movement, a strong encouragement of optimism. Because we are met at this time, and most of the speakers of the conference refer to that, by a very dangerous convergence of really mega crises, climate problems, global poverty, armed conflicts, migration, authoritarian threats to democracy, rampant corruption, and of course, this all is accelerated by COVID-19. So I think if we are honest, we have to admit that we are faced with failure of global governance, and we need a new paradigm of global governance. And this was mentioned quite a bit during the past sessions. We feel that this new paradigm is to include support to national governments who have been, in my opinion, taken as a very important and central element of creating global governance. But we have to admit that nation states need a lot of help in order to, for instance, govern a globalized market. Nation states simply don't have the geographic reach. Nation states and the decision makers in nation states don't have the time horizon. They don't have constituencies which are commensurate with the problems of globalization. And this is why we very strongly argue that, and a number of speakers at this conference have argued that we need a strong support to the governance which has been entrusted to nation states. And of course, this is also true for governmental organizations. So they need the support, in my opinion, of the other relevant actors of governance. And this is in particular civil society, organized civil society, but also the private sector. This triangle of good governance of government, civil society, and the private sector, which we are advocating in many situations, and there are very good examples on how this can work, not to replace national governments, but of course to support national governments with the wisdom and the power of these other actors. Now, how can we do this? I mean, Habermas, the German philosopher, talks about liberative democracy. And we see how this works if these three actors respect each other, if they discuss with each other, if they understand each other's interests and perspectives, and reach a consensus and submit to international. Now, we at Transparency International have just decided our strategy 2030. And I would say that we have really found ways in this philosophy, developing a new paradigm of global governance. Because we ourselves, we owe our success to three pillars of our activity. The first one is we focus on systemic change. We don't posture as the investigators and the prosecutors of individual cases of corruption. We want to change the systems and thereby fight impunity, for instance, in many countries. The second pillar is that we clearly want to embrace and have embraced in the past for our most successful activities a multi-stakeholder approach. Sometimes we call that antagonistic cooperation. In other words, we invite the others, we are independent from them, but as civil society, we create a magical triangle of good governance by bringing this consultative presence at high level. And the third very powerful pillar of transparency is the decentralized decision making, decentralized diagnosis of corruption, the development of programs for system change, the monitoring of reforms through our national chapters. So in this way, we are promoting exactly this new paradigm of global governance, which we hope can create optimism, strength, optimism, which is of course supported by the election of a new president in the United States. So we feel quite certain that a more just and more sustainable, more peaceful world, that a better world can be created with this approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Peter Eigen, for your statement. Last but not least, we'd like to hear from Ms. Karin Zamtin, Director General of Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency. So would you please start for this session?
Thank you very much. And I would like to start off by thanking the government of the Republic of Korea, the IACC Council, and of course, Transparency International for arranging this important conference, the biannual event discussing a most pressing topic. The past 4 days and almost 100 sessions of IACC have reconfirmed the importance of giving top priority to the fight against corruption, as corruption is one of the biggest obstacles to poverty reduction and to sustainable development. It puts actually the achievement of the whole Agenda 2030 at risk. Some of the most detrimental effects of corruption, which I take with me from this week, is how corruption erodes the trust and glue that binds together democratic society. It has been mentioned by previous speakers, but I would like to underline that again. It erodes the glue because citizens lose trust in democracy, political processes, and the ability of societies to deliver. Corruption hits the poor and the most vulnerable groups in society the hardest, and it exacerbates inequalities, not least between women and men. This is a pressing year, and COVID-19 has demonstrated how corruption severely hampers effective responses. Around the world, we have seen how the negative impact of corruption is felt across many health systems. I would like to touch upon 5 brief points, how we look upon the issue, how we look upon how to tackle another pandemic, the pandemic of corruption. 1, as the Swedish Minister for International Development Cooperation pointed out earlier this week, anti-corruption efforts should be, or rather must be, prioritized on the political agenda. At the previous IACC in Copenhagen, a joint high-level statement was agreed. Let us continue to implement these excellent commitments and follow up the status more closely in connection with the UN General Assembly's special session on anti-corruption in June next year. Second, we need to stop treating anti-corruption as a separate track. In my view, this is maybe the most important action to be taken. Anti-corruption must be approached holistically, and anti-corruption must be fully integrated into all development areas and all sectors. Anti-corruption measures are actually an integral part of the 2030 agenda and the Addis Ababa action agenda. It's already there. Thirdly, improved international cooperation is essential for success. Given that corruption is extremely complex and difficult to tackle, it requires collective action by public, private, and civil society actors. We all have different and important roles to play. Fourthly, we need to increase the use of new and innovative technologies in the anti-corruption work. This has also been mentioned before, but I would just like to underline this. We need to scale up the use of these tools, but I would like to underline one important thing. At the same time, we need to safeguard personal integrity and human rights. Fifth, anti-corruption measures should be part of the COVID-19 response. In focusing more on anti-corruption in the COVID response, we will not only contribute to better fighting the health virus, it can also create a window of opportunity to strengthen transparency and accountability, as well as ensuring that long-term anti-corruption measures are put in place. At SIDA, which is the Swedish Development Agency, we have recently put in place a new, or a renewed rather, action plan to combat corruption. This time, we focus a little bit more on corruption as a development obstacle. We have included just 3 points I would like to mention. We have, in this plan, included, of course, lessons from the anti-corruption measures in our COVID-19 response. We have anti-corruption measures in all our COVID-19 response, and therefore we can learn from that. And we foresee a special focus on the health sector to strengthen resilience and to build back better. We will continue to support interventions, maybe needless to say, but I would like to underline this, interventions that evidence shows can work against corruption. This means for us that we will continue to support the development of effective, transparent, independent, as well as accountable institutions in the countries we work in. And we will continue to support free and independent media, which can expose corruption and lead to better accountability. And we will, of course, continue with other strategic interventions against corruptions. As well as the last point, we will increase our use of innovative technologies in the anti-corruption work. Finally, I would like to end, and I hope that you will all hear this. I would like to invite you, all partners here at the conference, to join our new initiative to enable evidence-based, locally anchored, and adaptive approaches to achieve better results in the fight against corruption. And what is the purpose? The purpose is to develop more effective approaches to anti-corruption at country level in close cooperation with our partners, with all partners. We have an ongoing partnership with Undp. This will add leverage to this initiative. And I hope that you will join the session tomorrow when CEDA and partners will discuss integration of anti-corruption into national development plans to recover better for everyone from the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you again, the organizers, for organizing this conference so successfully. And thank you all for giving me the possibility to speak.
Thank you so much, Ms. Karin Zamti, for your presentations and deliberation. We would like to take more time, but sorry for this inconvenience. So I guess all the speakers gave us an opportunity to design the future of to fight against the corruption in post-COVID-19 world. Thank you very much for all of you. And now we have concluded the closing plenary. There will be announcement of Seoul Declaration to summarize takeaways the conference session. So I'd like to introduce musician Till, one of our winners of the Fair Play Anti-Corruption Contest. Are you there? When you're ready, please start.
Hosted by the Republic of Korea, the 19th International Anti-Corruption Conference was held virtually for the first time as the COVID-19 pandemic is still raging around the world. While we have not been able to gather in person, the virtual conference brought together over 7,000 participants from 135 countries and territories, representing civil society, government, multilateral agencies, media, academia, the arts, private sector, and concerned citizens. Over 6 days and more than 130 sessions, the conference has shown that across national borders, those who work to end corruption face similar challenges. It has also highlighted many anti-corruption successes around the world. In doing so, we have shared ideas, experiences, and strategies. We have forged alliances, and we have identified new approaches that promise to result in greater progress against corruption. Wherever we look around the world, the criminal and corrupt never cease to undermine the common good, as the deadly proliferation of corruption during the COVID-19 pandemic clearly shows there is much still to do to achieve our common objective of designing a future based on equity. Supporting the theme and objectives of the 19th IACC, Designing 2030, Trust, Truth, and Transparency, we declare that, as a movement, we will leave this conference stronger and more determined to hold power to account, to expand civil society space, defend media freedom, and stand up for whistleblowers, and to ensure social and economic justice everywhere. COVID-19 has overshadowed this conference, and corruption has flourished during the pandemic. We now have an opportunity to make more resilient, more transparent, and better performing health systems the legacy of COVID-19. 9 months after COVID-19 was declared a pandemic, promising vaccines are on the verge of rollout. The same devastating lack of transparency in public contracting and the misuse of COVID-19 funds that we have seen during the pandemic cannot be allowed to undermine the purchase and distribution of vaccines. We must fight to ensure fair and equitable access to the vaccines and a just economic recovery everywhere, leaving no one behind. Corruption harms every single one of us. It is why our cause unites people from all walks of life, whether global leaders or grassroots activists, but especially young people seeking ways to fight for their own future. Young people are taking the initiatives themselves. We must support them. We know corruption disproportionately affects women, the poor, marginalized, and the disenfranchised. We seek to build new alliances to address gendered forms of corruption, including amongst LGBTQAI+ communities, and we will join those seeking to dismantle the systematic discrimination that allows corruption to hit underserved communities, including ethnic minorities, the hardest. We have witnessed the rise of authoritarianism and populism, global trends that have dramatically eroded democratic norms across the world. As the trust in the independence of institutions has been undermined, impunity has increased. We must work to ensure democratic norms are upheld, expanded, and defended. We condemn the actions against activists, investigative journalists, and whistleblowers who are routinely intimidated, threatened, and killed for exposing corruption and injustice as a result. The power of big tech and social media giants continue to be harassed by those who seek to spread fake news and conspiracy theories that fuel hate, division, and truth and fear. Truth, trust, and transparency, and the loss of privacy are the victims. Human rights violations, social injustice, and environmental crimes, just some of the results. We are also encouraged by the growing consensus around the need for central registers of companies' beneficial ownerships. This is the result of relentless civil society pressure and the work towards building coalition from across sectors. We will forge alliances across sectors to counter corruption that stretches across national borders and end impunity for professional enablers of money laundering and other financial crimes. The opportunity to address the types of corruption with most victims grant corruption and impunity for it is offered by the first ever UN General Assembly Special Session Against Corruption. This is a milestone that cannot be missed. Now more than ever, our role as a global movement is vital in restoring and enhancing global norms in the fight against corruption. We thank the government and the people of Korea for hosting and supporting the 19th IACC, especially under the difficult circumstances posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. We recognize Korea's resilience and strong commitment to the IACC and the anti-corruption movement. We thank the delegates and look forward to adopting the 19th IACC outcomes as our guiding principles for the road we now begin. Build the future we want towards a 2030 of trust, truth, and transparency. The time to act is now.
Thank you. We appreciate all of you who worked hard to prepare for this conference and those of you who participate in this conference. Thank you very much. Now there will be a farewell speeches from the hosts who have prepared the 19th International Anti-Corruption Conference. Before start this farewell speeches, I'd like to tell our speakers for these sessions. We provide simultaneous interpretation for English only, so please select the global icon on the bottom of the Zoom. Okay? First, Ms. Chun Hyun-hee, Chairperson of Anti-Corruption and Civil Rights Commission, Republic of Korea, will give a farewell speech. Please give your attention.
여러분 안녕하십니까? 대한민국 국민권익위원회
Hello everyone. I am Chun Hyun-hee, Chairperson of Anti-Corruption and Civil Rights Commission. It has already passed 3 days since I greeted you first on December 1st, and it is now time to say goodbye. Throughout the conference, many people attended the 19th IACC, and your support has led the successful completion of this conference. As uncertainties have risen due to COVID-19, there have been many concerns and worries even until the last minute. In fact, this conference was supposed to be held in June this year, was postponed to December along with the changes in the location of the venue, and then it was decided to be a virtual conference. I'd like to give my warm round of applause to the IACC, TI, and TI Korea, and executive members and staff of the ACRC for being patient and making a good preparation. My appreciation also goes to more than 500 speakers, coordinators, and moderators who have shown a great deal of passion in spite of various inconveniences, taking part in online sessions from all around the world. Lastly, I express my gratitude to all the participants from across the globe for participating in this 19th IACC. Thanks to the efforts put in place by many people, with a title such as First of its Kind and the Largest Ever, we were able to make many achievements and values. This online conference was viewed by more than 1.5 million in total. Having such a great attention doesn't necessarily mean that the conference was a success. Although we have discussed many issues and good solutions, without actions taken afterwards, those are just nothing more than a good record to keep. However, many people around the world truly care about making a better tomorrows and start to take even small actions. The future 2030, 10 years from now, will make a change more than we could possibly imagine. In a world that was completely changed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, with an aim to making a transparent future based on truth and mutual trust, we discussed and shared insights on many issues for the last 4 days. I also impressed by a variety of experiences and deep insights from many people, and I've learned a lot. The task in hand now is to put these insights and ideas into action. It's now time to take one step forward toward the next 10 years. This step that we take in this era of crisis and devastation will be a key to creating hope for the future. Once again, I'd like to express my gratitude and respect for everyone who participated and contributed to this 19th IACC. And I wish you health and peace. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the near future in Korea. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your warm message, Ms. Chun Hyun-hee. Following speech will be delivered by Ms. Delia Pereira Rubio, Chair of Transparency International. So when you're ready, please proceed.
Thank you all of you for joining us for this first completely virtual IACC. And I will be very, very brief. We have heard a lot about back better and new normal. Neither of these will be possible if we do not restart, if we do not restore, if we do not rebuild trust. Rebuild trust in institutions, in leadership, trust in each of us. And in order to rebuild trust, we have to defend truth. Truth in an era, in a time where it is being attacked by fake news, misinformation, manipulation. The back better and the new normal cannot be the time for post-truth. Abandoning truth conducts to nothing good, but to suspicion, uncertainty, insecurity, surveillance. And in order to defend truth, we need to implement transparency, which is not only openness, it is also integrity, and it is also accountability, and it is also no impunity. These are the 3 T's of the title of the IACC this year. There is only 1 T missing. We will only prevail if we go into these objectives together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your message.
네, 환송사 감사합니다. 그러면 끝으로 위겟 라벨르 국제반부패회의 의장님을 모시도록 하겠습니다. 네, 시작해 주시겠습니까? 네, 감사합니다.
What an exceptional journey we've had with over 7,000 participants from 135 countries and territories. And on behalf of the IACC Council, it is time to express our gratitude. First, to the government of South Korea, to the Korean Anti-Corruption and Civil Rights Commission, to Transparency International, Korea. We are so grateful for your dedication and the hard work in the planning and overseeing this conference. It's also time to express our gratitude to the exceptional speakers and moderators from around the world who gave their time to share their knowledge and experience with us. And to all of you participants who decided to join the IACC because of your commitment to a more sustainable, equitable, and peaceful world, a world where future generations will thrive. So despite the devastating and universal consequences of COVID-19, we have come together virtually, come together to better understand the threat and the cost of corruption to our world. But what is so important is what we have learned from each other in terms of what can be done to prevent and deal with corruption as one of our worst world tragedies. This week, we have shared our experiences in so many different ways, including what the threat about the measures required to prevent the loss of resources in future crises, including for the resources being spent on COVID and those needed for dealing with climate change. To ensure that Goal 16 of the Sustainable Development Goals on peace, justice, and strong institutions is achieved, since fundamental for achieving all the other goals. Also, how to stop the enrichment of criminals and facilitators of illicit financial flows and money laundering. How to improve the governance of public and private institutions through integrity and transparency standards in all aspects of their work, with measures to ensure compliance. How multilateral institutions were introducing measures to assist governments from around the world, and how they were bridging businesses and governments in doing so. And how to better protect human rights, including gendered forms of corruption, such as sextortion. And how to face the emerging threat of mass manipulation and hate crime. So many other topics were discussed. This is why I would like to invite you to use the recorded version of the total conference, share it widely with your students at universities and colleges, with other civil society organizations, with businesses, with standard setters, and with your local, state, and national governments. This IACC had truth, trust, and transparency as its theme. As we leave each other, let us remember that together, whoever we are, we can make a difference. We can make a difference and restore trust. We can make a difference and restore trust, protect the rule of law, and have integrity and transparency standards that are fully implemented by the right system. There is no time to waste in paving the way for a more fair, equitable, and safe 2030. So to all of you, the IACC Council wishes you success in your endeavors, especially your continuation of your fight against corruption. And please stay well, stay healthy. Thank you.
We appreciate your very impressive farewell speech. Thank you all for your dedication for this conference. Finally, we have prepared a short farewell video which shows preparation process and main events of a 19th International Anti-Corruption Conference. I hope you enjoy it. Now we will finish all the plenary session of 19th International Anti-Corruption Conference. So I have to say goodbye here. Good night for participants in Korea, and have a great and wonderful day for our viewers around the world. Thank you very much, and please stay safe. Goodbye.
IACC와 함께 해주신 우리
Thank you very much for being with us, the TI and then TI staff member. Thank you very much for your efforts, and thank you so much for your cooperation. Thanks to your support and contribution, we can now successfully closing the 19th IACC. I hope you will have good days until the end of this year, and we hope to become happier and healthier next year. Thank you very much.